I love how far the meme of "for the many, not the Jew" is going with the Labour Party at the moment. The BBC are even using it in photos when they talk about the equality watchdog launching a probe into Labour about anti-Semitism. That's what happens when you agree to these definitions, isn't it, Labour? And you wonder why the Tories reject the one on Islamophobia. The Equality and Human Rights Commission has launched a formal investigation into the Labour Party over allegations of anti-Semitism. The watchdog told the party in March it had received a number of complaints and was considering next steps. It will now look formally into whether Labour has unlawfully discriminated against, harassed or victimised people because they're Jewish. Well, that's a good start. I mean, I have no idea. I'm not a member of the Labour Party. I don't tend to follow their internal machinations, but I have seen them doing it against black and minority ethnic people at their conferences when they were charging them less because they were non-white to enter these conferences. Now, I would love to see if there would be an investigation into whether that's legal or not, but of course, we're busy with Labour's Jewish problem at the moment. Dawn Butler said, "The Labour Party at its heart and core is an anti-racist party. So I see this as a way of ensuring, with the scrutiny of the EHRC, that the Labour Party's rules and policies are robust and fair." Interesting phrase, anti-racist party, isn't it? Because most people are just not racist. And so they don't worry about racism per se. They don't go out of their way to hunt it down and eradicate it wherever they find it, because they are not being a racist. Presumably they don't associate with racists, and so the amount of racism in their local vicinity is nil. And in my opinion, that's how we end racism. But when you declare yourself to be an anti-racist party, what you're saying is we have an ideological agenda, and to get to that agenda, we might have to do things to which these people might object. Well, that's how you end up saying, well, because of the inferior position of black and minority ethnic people in British society, we're going to charge them less. They're just worth less, you see. This is Labour Party policy. This is the opinion of the Labour Party. That's how you get to that position. She added that the investigation would help Labour build trust with the Jewish community. What does that even mean? I mean, what do you mean when you say Jewish community? How can a Jewish person not be part of the Jewish community? I mean, can they just freely disassociate from what you consider to be the Jewish community? And if they can't, isn't that kind of ethno-nationalist? Isn't that kind of the way of framing things that Hitler framed things about Jewish people? They're not like us, is what he thought. They're not like the German. They are the Jew. They are a separate and, in his opinion, parasitical race that lived alongside Germans. Now, I don't view Jewish people this way. I don't think that that's how we should consider them at all. I think that we should give Jewish people a way of not being part of what the Labour Party considers the Jewish community. Because if it's just who is an ethnic Jew, then you've arrived in exactly the same place conceptually to which Adolf Hitler had arrived. It's the ethnic or racial or religious, ethnic is the term that we'd use here. The ethnic status of being Jewish makes you a part of the Jewish community, whether you like it or not. And now Labour is going to interface with that community. Again, whether you like it or not. You might be a high Tory. You might say, well, hey, I hate everything the Labour Party stands for. And they're going to say, no, we're engaging with you to build trust with you. They know what you think. They've already claimed you. And whichever community leader that they claim is speaking on your behalf, well, the Labour Party has been plagued by accusations of anti-Semitism since mid-2016. The leadership has been accused of tolerating a culture of anti-Jewish prejudice by a number of its own MPs, some of whom have quit the party in protest. Leader Jeremy Corbyn insisted he's getting to grips with the issue and has beefed up the party's internal disciplinary procedures. Now, I have my suspicions that this kind of stuff comes from Momentum and various ethnic minority communities who largely support the Labour Party. Now, whether I'm correct on that, I guess will be found out by this investigation. And if that's the case, what are Labour going to do? Like, what are you going to do if it does turn out that there's a certain ethnic minority community in Britain that kind of hates Jewish people? What are you going to do if it's Jeremy Corbyn's hardcore communist supporters who kind of hate Jewish people. What are the options? Is Jeremy Corbyn going to disavow them? His most ardent supporters? Or is he going to suddenly turn his back on this particular ethnic minority community with which they've spent so much time polishing the image of, as Jess Phillips would say, tarnishing the good reputation of this community by wanting to hold true to their own values? What are they going to do? What are the options here? Like, I really, really love the way that this is turning into a giant car crash. This is wonderful to watch, and it makes great content for me. So the EHRC has said that it carefully considered the response it received about the anti-Semitism complaints from the Labour Party and would carry out an investigation looking at it. Whether unlawful acts have been committed by the party and its employees against its agents, and whether the party had responded to complaints of unlawful acts in a lawful, efficient and effective manner. Mike Katz, the chair of the Jewish Labour movement, said, "For years we have been warning that the Labour Party's response to anti-Semitism within our ranks has been woeful at best and institutionally racist at worst. Last year we took the unprecedented step of referring to the party to the EHRC, and we welcome their decision today to launch a full statutory inquiry." Well, what the hell can the Labour Party say about that? They're all for identity politics. They're all for believing that we live in systemic structures of systematic, institutional, systemic racism. So what are they going to say? This is completely within the framing of the Labour Party's worldview that this might be the case. And, I mean, one person following about this is a Twitter account called Nasha Jew, who documents this kind of anti-Semitism coming from the Labour Party a lot. And, I mean, a lot of it's very eye-opening, frankly. A lot of it wouldn't be out of sync with a lot of the stuff on 4chan. Frankly, the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, which has referred the issue to the EHRC, said British Jews had not been listened to. Gideon Falter, the campaign's chief executive, said, "In just 4 chilling years, Jeremy Corbyn has turned the party which pioneered anti-racism into the party that now finds itself in the company of the BNP, being investigated by the very equality and human rights regulator it had once fought so hard to establish. Over the course of his leadership, we have seen enough to convince us that Jeremy Corbyn himself is an anti-Semite and unfit for any public office, though few have acted. Most Labour MPs seem to agree with us." Woo lad. And it is true that there are ex-BNP members in the Labour Party. I mean, they don't have any barriers keeping them out after all. And I think even Jeremy Corbyn's son appointed one to a position of his own. I'll look it up after this, and I'll put the screenshot on the screen while I'm editing it. But isn't that interesting? The Labour Party's connections with the BNP, a party that was founded by neo-Nazis, and suddenly the Labour Party's in trouble for all of this anti-Semitism. Really weird. Now, in my mind, an actual anti-racist viewpoint is to not judge people based on their race. I mean, I'm such a throwback in that regard. I think that Martin Luther King actually had a few points, right? And in that regard, I'm a complete throwback. And that means if you start dividing people up because of their race and you start categorizing them and saying, right, okay, this race, yes, this race, no, must change these things to start evening these things out, then you are necessarily going to have to target one race for reduction and one race for increase. And I think that there's no way you won't end up becoming a massively racist party in that regard. I honestly do think that taking an individualistic view of this is the solution to it. Now, you can say, well, that's because you're an individualist. You say that's the solution for everything. Well, not everything, but it's certainly the solution to get rid of racism, in my opinion. I mean, as Stephen Hicks said, racism is a natural affront to individualism because you're not judging the person by the content of their character, you're judging them by the colour of their skin or the ethnic group that they come from. There's no other way not to be a racist. But the question is, will this be the end of Jeremy Corbyn? And the answer, in my opinion, is probably no. I actually think he'll survive this. I think that he is sufficiently orthodox in his socialist beliefs and has a sufficiently tight grip on the party that he'll be able to survive this, because he will just pay lip service to all of the requirements and demands from the EHRC and say, yes, we'll do all of this thing. And I think the problem will never really go away. The people who can be identified to be doing this will, of course, be suspended from the party. But I think there'll always be this kind of air about the Labour Party in regards to Jewish people. And I really do think it boils right down to the fundamental worldview that they're putting forward. I mean, for the many, not the few, is a very dangerous slogan. Why wouldn't Hitler use the same slogan? And I don't mean to Godwin's law this, but I mean he literally could have used that slogan for the Nazi Party in 1930s Germany. He literally could have said, it's for the German majority and not the Jewish minority that the National Socialist Party of Germany is operating in favour of. We are actively targeting a demographic, a minority demographic in society, and saying it's not for you, not you, us, not you. And then the Labour Party will complain that other people are using the politics of divisiveness. It's quite staggering. It's your fucking slogan, Labour Party. This is what you put behind you, as if any political party should target a section of its own citizenry as being the problem, which is what Labour does with the rich. If you think that is a sensible way to do politics instead of a unitary way, then you are wrong. Literally saying it's not for this part of our country, they are the problem, and we're going to do our best to get rid of them, seems kind of fascist to me. That's all I'm saying. I can see why the BNP lads are coming over your way, is all I'm saying. And it should come as no surprise that the wealthy people of Britain are looking at a possible Labour Party government and thinking of fleeing. I'd do the same in their position. For the many, not the few, indeed. It's all dog whistles from here on out, isn't it, Jeremy?